I'm divorcing a parasite who can't even do housework. And I'm demanding $60,000 in compensation. It seems I was the only one who thought I had a happy married life after marrying Robert, whom I met at a local event. He cheated on me with a new woman at work. And didn't even contact me when I was hospitalized with an injury. Even when I was hospitalized with a major injury, having both legs amputated, I felt so helpless. I can't believe he was getting along well with his mistress during this time. On top of that, to think he could say such awful things with a straight face. I've become so disheartened. Yes. I decided to silently withdraw. Then, when I was focusing on my main job, an opportunity for revenge came my way. He can only enjoy his time with his mistress for now. He should be prepared. People who can hurt others without remorse deserve appropriate responses. I'm Mary Gordon, and I'll be 35 this year. Since graduating from college, I've been helping with the family business and working part-time at an office. When I first started working part-time right after college, some people looked at me strangely, but I've gotten used to those reactions. While learning about the family business, I also took my parents' advice to gain experience in other jobs. I don't even need to explain why I work this way. People say things like, "You're young, you should work as a full-time employee." But everyone has their own circumstances, so I wish they'd just leave me alone. Lately, I've gotten used to the family business and have been entrusted with most of the work. Being an only daughter, I think I need to be able to handle the business on my own eventually. So I'm training hard now. I met my current husband, Robert, at an event organized by local businesses. I was working part-time and was asked to help with the event. Unable to say no, I found myself participating in this unfamiliar event. I was attending as part of my job, but that's when I met Robert, who was working at the booth next door. Oh, it's rare to see a woman participate in this event. Is it? It's my first time, but is it that uncommon? Yes, quite rare, so I was a bit curious. I participate in this event every year, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask. At first, our conversation was just polite small talk, but as we talked during our free time, he became someone I found intriguing. We exchanged contact information, and soon became close enough to keep in touch whenever we found time. Robert, who talks to anyone easily, and I, being shy, were an odd pair. But we got along incredibly well when talking about our common interest in comics. As we visited various comic-related places and museums, we grew more aware of each other and started dating. After dating for a while, on our second Christmas night, while walking through the lit-up streets, Robert suddenly stopped. "I've been interested in you since that first event we met at. Will you marry me? If it's with you, I'd be happy to." And so, Robert and I got married. Married life was blissful. Work was tough, but coming home to someone I love and having peaceful conversations at the end of the day was something I cherished. However, I never imagined that such a happy life would begin to unravel from a small fray. About 6 months after our marriage, one day, Robert brought home flowers. "Welcome home." "What's with these flowers?" "I got them from someone at work. They said to decorate the house I live in with my wife." "Do we have a vase for them?" "Come on, you know that, don't you? It's a waste if we can't properly display these beautiful flowers." Saying so, he went into the bedroom. The flowers Robert brought home were yellow roses. It's rare to give flowers, especially yellow roses, for no special reason. As I wondered about this after Robert left, I decided to decorate them in a vase I found at home. The next day, Robert came home with a small box. "It's from the same female colleague who gave me the flowers, a wedding gift for us." What could it be? A vase? The small box I received was labeled a vase. It must be a vase. Maybe she thought it'd be handy since we don't have one. I put the yellow roses you brought yesterday in a jar I found. And placed it at the entrance. Oh, thank you. I was concerned by his slightly flustered expression. We already had the flowers in a vase. And why a wedding gift now, after half a year of marriage? Yellow roses are a rare variety not often seen in stores. It seemed too coincidental. Curious, I looked up the meaning of yellow roses and found it was "please break up." I decided it must be a coincidence and that I was overthinking it. Flower meanings aren't that common these days, it's just a coincidence. The flower isn't to blame, I'll just nicely display what I've received. So we also received a vase. Thinking it rude not to use the vase we received, I took it out of the box and removed the cushioning material. It was just a normal small vase in a box. As I was about to take out the vase, I suddenly felt pain. Ouch. When I pulled back my hand, I saw a crack in the glass. Despite being carefully wrapped in cushioning material, the unnatural crack was concerning. I had a bad feeling and decided to ask Robert about it. Hey, about the vase we received the other day. Did you drop it before bringing it home? Of course not. I wouldn't carelessly handle a gift like that. From his expression and demeanor, I was convinced he was telling the truth. Indeed, when he handed it to me at home, he was very careful, as if he were giving me a treasure. Is that so? It seemed to be cracked. Right, I need to water the flowers. No, don't dodge the question. What kind of person gave you those presents? Robert, scratching his head with an annoyed expression, answered. She's a new office worker who recently joined. Why does that matter to you? Well, it's not just curiosity. Then what? Whatever gifts I receive shouldn't concern you, right? Are you in a position to meddle in everything? From that day on, Robert's tone became much harsher. Whenever he spoke, it was full of sarcasm and it made me feel terrible. He would immediately blame me for anything, forcing me to live cautiously. Always trying to avoid his accusations. When Robert was unusually happy while drinking at home, I took a chance and asked him. Hey, about the roses and vase from the other day. I was thinking of returning the favor. What do you think would be good? Should I just choose something myself, if it's not too much trouble? No need for unnecessary things. It's a gift I received. So it would be rude not to choose myself. But I'm saying you don't need to butt in. You really don't get it. His attitude, the meaning of the flower, "please break up," and his unusual refusal of my offer to choose something in return, all of it was suspicious. Maybe it was a woman's intuition, but I decided to hire a detective for a covert investigation. The detective was highly competent, and I soon had the investigation results in hand. Seeing the results, I was unsure what to do next. I still had feelings for Robert, but I was also uncertain if I could trust him in the future. Above all, I was paralyzed by the harsh reality I had to face so soon after our marriage. Entangled in these problems, I decided to wait and see for a bit. I didn't need to act on the investigation results immediately. They could be my trump card when the time comes. So, I stored the results away. Hoping it was just a momentary lapse, I returned to my daily life with Robert. Whether that was the right or wrong decision, I didn't know. That day, I had been out at work. One day, my boss asked me to retrieve some documents from the warehouse. They were old, apparently located deep inside the warehouse. While searching for the requested documents in the dark warehouse, I accidentally caught my foot on a ladder. Unfortunately, I got tangled up in piled up documents and containers. And they came crashing down on me with tremendous force. Unable to get out of the way, I ended up buried under a mountain of documents and containers. I was found by someone from another department who happened to have business in the warehouse and was rushed to the hospital. It seemed I had lost consciousness under the containers and didn't have the memory of it. When I woke up, the doctor immediately told me something devastating. Apparently, the way the containers fell caused severe injuries, and I had to have both of my legs amputated. Unable to accept this reality immediately after waking up, I could do nothing but stay in my hospital room. What could I do now, without my legs? What concerned me most, though, was Robert. It hadn't been long since we got married, and there was still unresolved tension between us due to the recent incidents. With the gift of roses and a vase, we had lived without major issues since our marriage, so it gnawed at my mind. During my hospital stay, my colleagues took turns visiting me. I felt terrible for worrying them, especially given their busy schedules. For their sake, who had shown me so much concern, I felt the need to recover and be discharged from the hospital as soon as possible. In between rehabilitation sessions, I tried contacting Robert several times, but he didn't answer his phone. Worried that he might not be eating properly in my absence, I sent him messages. But days passed without even a read receipt. My colleagues said they had informed my family about the accident, so he should be aware that I was hospitalized. While I was truly grateful for the visits from my colleagues, there were times when I felt very lonely and wished Robert was there. Not having him by my side when I needed him was more painful than I could have imagined. However, I couldn't afford to wallow in self-pity forever. Once discharged, I would return to my normal life. So I had no choice but to focus intensely on my rehabilitation, even with prosthetic legs. In the end, I received no contact from Robert until the day before my discharge. The day before my discharge, when I finally informed him that I would be leaving the hospital, he sent a one-word message, "Oh." Probably, he meant okay. As I muttered, "What does "oh" even mean?" to myself, I could do nothing but stare at the screen. In the end, I had a particularly close colleague from work pick me up and help me with my discharge. Returning to my regular life after a long hospital stay was harder than I had anticipated. Working with unfamiliar prosthetic legs was physically demanding. Fortunately, my job was desk work, so the accident didn't prevent me from working. But it was still challenging. What bothered me most was that I hadn't seen Robert even after returning home. He must have known about my discharge since he responded to my message the day before. My discharge was on a weekday, so maybe he had unavoidable work. But why hadn't I seen him at home for several days after my discharge? Was he coming home late at night after I went to bed and leaving before I woke up? However, there were no signs that anyone else had been in the house, while he had been busy with work and coming home late in the past. His complete absence for several days was unsettling. I hoped nothing strange or accidental had happened to him. While I was sitting in the living room looking at my phone with these thoughts, I heard the door open. Turning around, I saw Robert standing at the door with a large duffel bag in hand. Noticing me, he showed a brief hint of recognition but then tried to leave the room. "Wait a minute. Where have you been all this time? Stop nagging. It's none of your business." How can it not be my business? You haven't contacted me at all, and you haven't been home for days. Of course, I'm worried. Enough. It's exactly this kind of nagging that's so annoying. Shouting, he threw the duffel bag he was holding onto the floor with a thud. Being with you never leads to anything good. You always do unnecessary things. Unnecessary things like, "I'm busy with work," and then you go and get injured. On top of that, your company people tell me to go to the hospital. Such unnecessary meddling. How could you say that? Thanks to that, a deal that was about to be finalized is now ruined. A contract worth $100,000, gone because you got injured. As I was about to ask how my injury could possibly cause a contract to be lost, Robert slammed his hand on the nearby dining table. Anyway, being with a jinx like you, I'll end up unlucky too. Take responsibility and let's get a divorce. That's too much. Why all of a sudden? Without answering my question, Robert took a piece of paper from his duffel bag and thrust it in front of me. I'm divorcing a parasite who can't even do housework. And I'm demanding $60,000 in compensation. Divorce? Compensation. Right? It's compensation for the mental distress you've caused me. And for interfering with my work. Could there really be such a thing? Robert, who was speaking about this unbelievable matter with a serious face. Was he really the man I once loved? As I struggled to respond, he moved closer. Your only response should be yes. I won't listen to anything else. Yes. With no energy left to cry, I could only receive the divorce papers Robert handed to me. And you submit the divorce papers. I'm too busy. I quickly submitted the divorce papers and became single again. There's no time to stop for such matters, as big things are coming up at work. I hurriedly packed my belongings and left the house we lived in together. When leaving the house, I took my time getting ready. Maybe I was hoping Robert would change his mind. However, my hopes were in vain, as Robert clicked his tongue and glared at me. Hurry up and leave. You have no place here anymore. Robert snatched the half-packed bag and threw it at the entrance. I never expected our life together to end so quickly, but it couldn't be helped. Perhaps it was for the best, as I never fully grasped how selfish Robert was. In the end, Robert never really cared about me. I thought his gaze was on me, but it was probably always on his mistress far away. I'm frustrated with myself for not realizing something so obvious. But no amount of anger can turn back time. Now, I'm determined to become someone who can show up to Robert. Even without my legs, I haven't lost my guts. I refuse to be defeated here. Time waits for no one, so all I can do is give my best in what I'm capable of now. I'll continue with my usual work. My main job is real estate management. I run a real estate company inherited from my parents, with an annual rental income of about $9 million. It was a long journey to get the annual rental income to $9 million. Especially when I first started and didn't know anything about real estate management. However, the thought of returning home to Robert kept me clinging on and working hard. He probably never imagined that I was working so hard, with an annual income of $9 million. Looking back, it's probably good that I never told Robert about the rental income. If a person who can treat his wife so terribly would know I have millions in income, who knows what he might do. I don't often appear in the forefront of business, but sometimes I show up for important work. That day, I was heading out with a few male employees. I was involved in a major office building renovation project, and showed up for a meeting with the stakeholders, only to encounter an unwanted face. One of the stakeholders was Robert. He acted as if he hadn't noticed me, clearly intending to completely ignore me. Yet, I couldn't help but be bothered by the female employee standing next to Robert. It wasn't just because I was his ex-wife. Their behavior was too conspicuous for a professional setting. I noticed them talking intimately among the many employees and decided to confront them boldly. I'm pleased to be working together. You're the one who sent the flowers recently, right? The woman, talking amiably with Robert, turned to me and smiled. Yes. Did you enjoy the yellow roses? I hadn't mentioned yellow roses. Yellow roses are rare, and the way she casually mentioned them made it clear she was the one. Her smile was as radiant as a rose, but her eyes felt like a murky swamp. hiding inscrutable thoughts and schemes. This was no ordinary affair. To send such a declaration of war to a married woman was not normal. Bingo. It was she who sent the yellow roses and the broken vase, claiming it was a wedding gift. Yes, very much. A thoughtful person like you must have wonderful encounters. Thanks to that, I'm now engaged to marry Robert. She said this while showing off the ring on her left ring finger. We just met a little late, but it's a true love story. For some reason, she seemed proud to flaunt her love conquest. I couldn't understand why someone would boast about such a thing. I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. The goddess of love knows what's real, and our love proves it. Robert smugly stood beside Angela, who was with her over-the-top ideas. I couldn't keep up with these two. All I wanted was to finish my work and leave, but then Angela spoke up. By the way, isn't the person in charge of the office building renovation late? What are they thinking, making us wait? After Angela had just finished boasting about her love conquest and talking about the power of love, she suddenly started acting like a capable woman. This almost made me burst out laughing. I noticed Angela glancing irritably at her watch while Robert casually placed his hand on her waist. I told them, "It's me. I am the person in charge of this building and the current renovation project." The two of them stared at me with dumbfounded expressions. Robert's face, already looking foolish, seemed even more so. Now you're lying too? Despite losing your husband. I think that statement is inappropriate in this setting. She dismissed my statement as a lie. Her reaction was telling. However, Robert's expression turned to shock, and he pointed at me. That can't be true, right? You're just a clerk. I was doing office work while helping with the family business. This is the family business. I didn't mention it because there was no need to. But now, it's none of your concern anymore. Robert and Angela still seemed incredulous. But after confirming with other employees and stakeholders, they finally seemed to accept it. Robert, during a name card exchange, tore my business card into pieces when he received it, leaving me laughing at his absurdity. Impossible. I can't accept this. You were just a part-time office worker. And I was fed up with you. That's a lie, right? It's not a lie. And I've never seen anyone tear up a business card like that before. It's the first time I've encountered such rudeness in all my years of business. The office building renovation meeting proceeded on time. But the couple's faces looked quite bad throughout. No wonder, realizing that someone they look down upon is actually the building owner must have been shocking. Robert kept trying to catch my eye during the meeting, which was distracting. He initiated the divorce and yet acted like this. What did it mean? After the meeting, there was talk of having a get-together. Given the likelihood of working together for an extended period, it seemed wise to know each other a bit better. The gathering was small, but finding a place on short notice seemed challenging. And there was difficulty with the reservation. While everyone was busy arranging, Robert approached me and slipped something like a piece of paper into my hand. Feeling something off, I looked and found a folded note and a piece of candy. Unfolding it, I read, "Can we sneak away together?" Is he mistaking this for some kind of mixer? Asking an ex-wife to sneak away together is just wrong. Disgusted, I looked at it twice. Noticing my reaction, Robert winked and made a shooting gesture with his fingers at me. Despite it being a business-related social event where one should stay till the end, I couldn't bear to remain in the same group as Robert. I quietly explained the situation to a subordinate and discreetly left the gathering without participating. I raced through the crowd, hoping Robert wouldn't notice my departure. 5 days later, I had an unbelievable number of missed calls. Checking, they were all from Robert, who had also left several messages. There were 33 calls in total. Calling so much during working hours, he must be quite idle. Bothered by the incessant calls, I decided to call him back. What is it? I'm busy, so your constant calls are troubling. Just say what you need to. Hey, why don't we give it another try? What are you talking about? Has stress gotten to your head? I'm serious here. I realized that you, Mary, are irreplaceable. You made me see that. Drunk in his own words, Robert's cheesy spiel continued. I was out of my mind back then, and you felt the same way, right? Don't lump me in with you. You're the one who initiated the divorce, ignoring me when I was injured. I wasn't ignoring you. It was just that. This was my cue to play my trump card. Angela Morgan, right? I had you investigated before. I know you were going to her place after work on weekdays, even when I was in the hospital. He admitted it rather easily. Yeah, I was at Angela's place. I thought you were in the hospital, so you'd be fine. So, you were busy being with Angela. You're remarried now, so it's none of my business anymore. I was just misled by her. It's not too late. Let's start over. I found it hard to understand his reasoning. You must be struggling without me, right? If you need help, I can hire a maid for you. I don't mind having others in the house. As I stood there, speechless and appalled, he confidently continued as if he had a brilliant idea. I'm thinking of quitting my job to support you. I'm calling you now because I'm ready to do that. You've always put your job first. To think that you would give up your work to take care of me. Yes. If it means living with you again, work doesn't matter. I'm so touched. I hung up the phone then. Knowing Robert, he would surely act as I imagined. Right after hanging up, I went straight to the city hall. What I submitted there was a non-acceptance notice. Filing this would prevent any marriage registrations from being processed without my consent. 2 days after my visit to the city hall, I received a call from Robert. Hey, it's me. I was told something weird at the city hall counter. Weird like what? Well, they said they won't accept it or something like that. What are you trying to say? Just spit it out. I'm not free all day. I mean, the marriage registration. I quit my job because we were getting back together, and now everything's gone awry. Though he tried to sound casual, I could sense panic in his voice. I decided to tell him the truth. They won't accept it? Well, of course. And trying to submit a marriage registration without agreement is just appalling. So, does that mean I can't get married? What should I do now that I've quit my job? Quitting your job was your own decision, wasn't it? I never told you to quit. And deciding to marry was something you rushed into on your own. I said my piece and then hung up, promptly setting my phone to block his calls. I should have done this much sooner. For a while, life was peaceful, but that tranquility was abruptly shattered. A woman appeared before me. Her appearance was disheveled, her hair a mess, and her eyes harshly narrowed. It's all your fault I ended up like this. Nobody at the company talks to me anymore. And Robert has gone somewhere. What's your plan? Take responsibility. For a moment, I didn't realize who she was, but her voice gave her away as Angela. The pride she once had when bragging about the yellow roses was gone. She seemed like a woman with a tough personality, raising her voice hysterically. Even though I knew I had nothing to fear, it wasn't pleasant to witness such a scene up close. Are you talking about Robert? He's no longer my concern, so let me go now. It's not none of your concern. Because of you, I lost my job, I have no money. You really are a jinx. It was then I realized something. Jinx, huh? You two are very much alike, a perfect match for each other. What do you mean by that? Jinx, that's what he called me too. Just like a parting shot when things don't go his way. So what? I'm not really a jinx. What's wrong with stating the facts? What's wrong? Why don't you think about it yourself? I'm not obligated to teach you, and you're bothering me. If you continue to harass me like this, I'll call the police, okay? Then Angela, fueled by anger, lunged at me. In the scuffle, my prosthetic leg almost came off, making it hard to keep my balance. I fell down, and the personal alarm I always carried sounded loud. Startled people around us began to look in our direction. While Angela was grabbing me, the police arrived. Apparently called by someone who had witnessed the commotion. I explained the situation to the police and asked them to check the security cameras. They confirmed I was not at fault. And issued a restraining order to ensure this wouldn't happen again. Why do I always have to suffer like this? Why? Maybe it's because you decided to have an affair with a married man and tried to snatch him away? Also, I will be contacting you through a lawyer to demand compensation. So please be prepared to deal with it. I couldn't let Angela get away with this without facing consequences. So I decided to pursue compensation. I wanted her to suffer for her role in destroying my marriage with Robert and for the affair. I later heard through the grapevine that Robert had married me, dreaming of a carefree life funded by my rental income, and had been running headfirst into that fantasy. He imagined a life of ease without work, relying solely on my rental income, which is just astounding. As a result, he quit his job and is now struggling to find new employment. Angela, too, became an outcast at work for getting involved with a married man, sitting on pins and needles. But now she faces the compensation demand from me, and the necessity to continue working for her livelihood. It's the result of being blinded by immediate desires and money. I have nothing to do with them now. As adults, they should control their emotions and act responsibly. I, on the other hand, am riding the wave with my real estate business, living off the rental income. Living off rental income might sound appealing, but in reality, it involves a lot of hard work. These are all high-stakes tasks, and I'm always under stress. With no break from the tension, it's honestly quite exhausting. To make a change, even a small one, in my life, I decided to get a pet. I had heard that pets could be therapeutic, and I truly feel it's true. Playing with my dog, Coco, helps me forget the hardships and challenges of work. I'm determined to fully enjoy and appreciate the happiness and joy I have now and live each day with gratitude.